Okay, welcome to part two. Part one I called collections. Remember, you're sort of culling from your larger library um, into these smaller groups, these smaller collections, and I made a group of 10 images that are sort of consisting of line. What we're going to do in this video is go over developing, or the develop module, and we're going to sort of practice, or I'm going to show you again the export PDF. Again, you're not handing in individual images. If you find yourself uploading a bunch of JPEGs from a folder, that means you're not doing this correctly. So I can't reiterate enough knowing how to export that PDF, because that's how we're going to sort of see images. I'm going to see your images and you're going to see each other's images. Okay, so without further ado, let's head into develop. Remember, we have our modules up here. When I hit develop, things sort of change. I get some different options over here on the right hand side. I'm going to close these up briefly. And you also likely don't need your left-hand side panel here, your navigator and your history, which we're going to come back to in a second. You know you're in your line collection, so I can close this out. I can also tell down here where it says collection, it says line. Okay. I want a little more room. Developing is where we sort of take an image and alter that image. Okay. Before I head into this, sort of just a sort of suggestion or a requirement, more or less. I don't want you necessarily messing with the stuff that's happening over here. People might sort of get curious and start making their images really high contrast or black and white, or I think it looked better this way. I simply want you to do this basic developing that we're going to do in relation to the histogram and what's called the whites and blacks down here. Okay, if you get sort of wild and funky, that's not going to sort of bode well when we start sort of looking at the sort of photographic integrity of the image, and I'll talk about what that means in relation to this histogram here in a minute. Okay, so I have an image here. This image is too dark. I can just look at it and know that it's too dark just by looking at the areas of light, meaning sort of probably right in here and in here, and knowing that they're not quite, I'm going to zoom in there, they're sort of a middle gray. Okay, and I know this image needs to be lightened considerably. I also know it because I'm looking over here what is called the histogram. Some of you might even see the histogram on your cameras when you take an image. Okay. What this represents is basically where pixels are, where they are on your image. The left-hand side are the shadow, or the darker portions of the image, and the right-hand side are the lighter portions of the pixels. I said I knew this image was too dark just by looking at it, but I could also quickly look at this histogram and know that it's too dark. I call this sort of the mountain of pixels. The mountain of pixels should span this entire left-right area right here, and it doesn't. It's missing images that are on the sort of right-hand side. Okay, so how do we fix this? There's a lot of different ways we can fix this, but one of the easiest ways is using this what's called black and white sliders down here. Okay, so this is a two-part fix, and what it does is it stretches the pixels. It stretches pixels, sort of what are going to be the pixels over here, and pulls them over to the right. Okay, so what we're missing here again is the sort of lighter end of things on this spectrum. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to these whites and blacks down here, and I'm going to hold down Option. I think that's Alt on a PC, and it says, and you can see it says Reset Tone when I hit that. I'm going to click and hold. Remember, I have Option held down on my keyboard the whole time I'm doing this. Okay, I'm going to click, hold, and I'm going to push, push, and push, and push until I see, and you can see it coming there. I'm going to go too far. Excuse me. Until you see pixels start to appear. It's probably going to be black, 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 black. There's some stuff. Okay, meaning there's some pixels that represent the light end of the scale. I'm going to do it again, and I want you to watch my histogram. I'm pulling the pixels over to the right hand side. Okay, I don't want to go too far. That's way too far. Okay, I'm going to pull it back. Okay, now where and how far do you want to go? I like to go just past the point that I start to see, kind of more than a handful of pixels start to appear. So for here, I'd say it'd be about right there. Okay. What this indicates here is that I've stretched that considerably. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing for the blacks, and I don't think I'm going to have to go too far on the blacks because I see already that there's pixels over there, but I'm just going to check it. Okay. And you'll see over on that right hand side those yellow pixels start to appear. Okay. This is a much more balanced image in terms of color and in terms of tone, which refers to the sort of light and dark of the image. Okay. Again, you were to make this minor fix to your 10 images of line, 10 images of shape. That's for next week. And you're to make this for your color and texture, which is your project 2, which you're getting today. You're to make that for each of these 10 images. Okay, so once inside this collection, you can do it fairly quickly. You'll note that these images, and I actually shot them kind of dark on purpose, need a little pop. Okay, this shouldn't take too long. Here, let's sort of take this one. You'll note on this image, there's really, most pixels are right here. We need to stretch that. Hold down Option, pull, pull, pull. There, some pixels start to appear. Pull this way, start to appear. Okay. Now, once we make this fix, this should stay, and it should stay in Lightroom. I'm going to sort of pop back to this one. This is the sort of more, the better version of this thing. One great thing Lightroom gives you is the option to, it says cycles before and after. You'll see this YY down here. I can hit this and it'll show me the before and after. Okay. If I zoom in, I can sort of see a specific area. And I can see what it's done to that area in relation to this. You'll note that these pixels, I'm looking sort of right here and right here, we still retain some what I call photographic detail, but the contrast is much better. Okay, I'm going to zoom out, and then when you're done with that, you can click over on the left-hand side here. One other thing to think about is what's called the history. Okay, on your left-hand side panel, when you're in Develop, when you're in the Develop module, you will see lots and lots of things being recorded under your history. You'll see white clipping, black clipping, I reset, and you'll see everything that you did. Okay, this is a good thing in the sense that it lets you sort of pop in between these things. Say you did an adjustment and you want to sort of see where you were, 2 steps back. We can click on that. This is where I went too far. And you say, no, that's awful. Let's go back to this one. Let's go back here. Okay, all the steps that you do are recorded in this history. Okay, this is the part of Lightroom that is database driven. It just attaches this information to the image. It doesn't fundamentally change the image, and that's what we sort of talked about in relation to what's called non-destructive editing. That is a good thing. Okay, you'll also note the big reset button over here. If you sort of headed down a road that you realize is really no good, you want to start from scratch again, you can reset. Okay, if you hit reset and say, no, it did look good, we can go right back to that last step, and this is where our image will stand until we do anything else to it. Okay, the things that are recorded here are developing things. They don't record when you go over and look at the navigator per se, because that's not an editing step. That didn't really sort of fundamentally change the image. Okay, so I did this image, and I think I did this image. I'm not going to do all 10 images in the interest of time. That's your basic, the blacks and whites, that's the basic developing you're going to do up to this point. Okay. Now, since I have had a few emails and sort of, hey, how do I hand stuff in? Again, you should watch the, I believe it's Lightroom Basics Part 2. I go through this export on last week's video. I will go through it again here real quick. Okay. This would be the step you would be taking if you had developed all 10 images of line and we're sort of ready to hand that in. What I'm going to do is go over to slideshow here. It knows it knows I'm in this collection. It's not going to accidentally export all my images. Okay, and the thing that I want you to sort of set this to, remember we only had sort of a color wash or a background color. I'm going to in fact get rid of that color wash. We turned all this stuff off. Okay, and the only thing I left I think was repeat. The only thing that was checked is and a background color. Okay. All this other stuff is guides and casting shadows and all sorts of stuff that we don't necessarily want. Um, Over here on the left hand side, we're going to export PDF. Wait for it. And I have my digital photography course. Okay. And I'm going to save this as my first name, last name, underscore, and I believe this would be line final, because these would be my final 10 line images. Look at D2L, look at the project requirements. I believe that's the name of the file. For the line, for the sort of final 10 images, I want to bump the quality up. Okay. Remember, I did the original sort of group of 100 images, and I set those for a quality of 60 and a width of 640 by 480. What I want you to do, and I'll put this up on D2L, is to have that quality at 100, and I want the, and you have these common sizes, I want that set for 1200 by 800. The idea is that with your 100 images, you're basically giving me you know, a smaller version. I can sort of check that you did it, etc. This one is a much more sort of important group, I guess, your sort of final group, and really kind of what you're going to get graded on. You don't have to do .pdf. In fact, if you uncheck that hide extensions, it automatically adds that .pdf. You know, it's like when you save a Word document, you shouldn't really type .docx or whatever. It's going to add that to it for you. Okay, so I'm going to hit export. You'll see the export up here, and it's going to export those 10 images. Okay, for your final group of 10, this is what you're handing in. Okay, I'm going to make a little note on D2L just to sort of clarify what types of things you're handing in for projects 1 and 2. Note that project 2 is color and texture. The requirements are very similar, 100 images. That group of 100 is going to be exported and as a group of 100, and then you're going to hand in 2 sets of 10 for that. Again, take a look at D2L. I'll put that on the news page just to sort of clarify what it is you are handing in. Okay. So that's developing, or a very sort of simple version of developing, and again exporting as a PDF. One last note, and I'm going to pop over to develop. And I actually don't have an example of this, but occasionally you'll have an image, and again, I don't really have an example of it. It's usually something that has like something very bright in it. If you were to develop an image like this, and I'll sort of fake it here, and things go, even though your histogram sort of shows you that you've spread those pixels out a bit, but it just looks wrong. Generally speaking, what that is what's called something like a specular highlight, or a reflection off of something, or the sun is in the image, and that's sort of throwing your camera off, okay, or throwing the developing process off. You might sort of override, let's say for instance that this area right here where the sun, you might override that. See how it's one of the first ones to come in and pull that a little bit further. Okay, I say that just as a warning to the fact that this is sort of a first step, and as we move through the semester, we're going to get more complicated with developing. But for 95% of the images, this whites and blacks is going to work quite well. Okay. That's it for these. I'm going to do a quick intro to project 2 in terms of color and texture. You should be shooting this week and getting ready to hand stuff in next week. Okay.